Okay, hello everyone. I'm sorry I'm still not there. I'm sure you're having a lovely time without me, but just want to quickly go through the question you did before half term on explain the main reasons why states seek to acquire nuclear weapons. Right, just going through the sheet that you've got. The first thing is the structure. There was a couple of you that again decided to do your own structure. We do tell it to do this way for a reason. 3 or 4 points, a very brief introduction that shows some knowledge, doesn't need to be massive, and it doesn't need a conclusion. 3 or 4 points with some detail. You've got to show some knowledge. So just a few points that are true for the vast majority of people. A lot of you made 3 points, but 2 or 3 of them were far too similar to each other. This was a question where that was definitely possible. If you're talking about states becoming more powerful with nuclear weapons or states becoming more prestigious, there is the possibility that you could have some crossover there. So you've got to try and explain why they are different. In what way are those two things different? If you're making exactly the same point and even using the term power in both of them, it's not really different, and an examiner might not think that they're separate points. Try and use some detail. Try and go through and actually think about what knowledge you have. It's an opportunity to stuff in the knowledge you have. If we've talked about something and you know something, don't waste it. Put it in there. You don't have to explain the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but at least if you mention it, they know that you understand it and that you know that it exists. You can use terms like hard power. That would show some knowledge. You could talk about the axis of evil speech. That would help. You could talk about the permanent five. Realist, liberal. You can put these things in there. You need to be using the knowledge you've got. I think far too many of you still think, well, that's easy, I don't need to put it in. In a 15-mark question, you don't want to spend loads of time explaining something, but you need to drop in bits of knowledge, lots and lots of knowledge, and that can really lift the mark within a level. So the points that I think would have been useful to make, and it's supported by the mark scheme, is the first one. States want to have nuclear weapons because they're the most destructive weapons available. Realists would say this is the main argument. They increase a state's hard power. If they exist, of course most states are going to want to have them. That would be the one point. Then a separate point that too many of you crossed over is they then provide security, or they're the ultimate deterrent. And you could see that during the Cold War, despite the fact that the USA and USSR had nuclear weapons, neither of them were used because of mutually assured destruction. So you could mention that as well. And I think this was a good example, a good opportunity to use the North Korea example. That would have been a reason why North Korea pushed so hard to begin their nuclear program after 2003, because they knew they were on the edges of sort of the international system, a rogue state if you like, and so this was going to be a way of increasing their security, because no one is going to attack a country that has nuclear weapons. It's a different point. The deterrent point is different. Prestige could be a different point. It makes a state seem more powerful. There is an argument that the only reason the UK and France are seen as powerful countries in the world now is because we have nuclear weapons. There are countries with far bigger economies than us. There are countries that are just more integral to the world system. I mean, we're not even the most important countries in Europe anymore, but it's because of our nuclear power. Then you could say that that's also a reason why North Korea wanted it. They are taken far more seriously in the world post-nuclear capabilities than beforehand. Another point would be if your rival gets them, and I think this is a really good point to make. Of course, if you're a state that you're in conflict with, if they get nuclear weapons, you don't want to be left behind in that arms race. You want to be being on a level with them should it boil over into war. So USA got nuclear weapons, so USSR got nuclear weapons. USA increased the power, vertical proliferation, another term you could use, so did the Soviet Union. India got nuclear weapons. India come into conflict with Pakistan over the Kashmir region, so Pakistan got nuclear weapons, and you could argue that's why Iran are so keen on getting nuclear weapons, because Israel have them. And there is that threat that Israel could attack them, but if they got nuclear weapons, they may not. So there's 4 really good points that you could have made. You need to make sure they're distinct and different. There were lots of good examples I've put on your sheet. A good paragraph. It's not perfect by any means, but it shows, it uses the vocabulary really well and makes a good point. One final thing that I want to say that's on the sheet, we did talk about nuclear weapons technology perhaps being less expensive than other forms of military power, having an army of 1 million men or sort of a squadron of stealth bombers. That's not to say that nuclear weapons are cheap. poor states couldn't get nuclear weapons, but they're more economically viable than having to have a 2 million strong army or something like that. So just be very careful about how you go about making your points. So please start thinking for 15 mark questions about putting knowledge in. Don't write loads, don't explain. A couple of you explained in vast detail what the NPT is. You don't need to do that, you just need to show that you understand it and move on. So on your sheets, please go through and just make notes on what you need to do to improve, and stick it in your folder, and hopefully I'll get you to do another 15 mark question in the next couple of days. Hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, bye bye.